you doing?
Hold up for a minute, maybe, or?
Hey Keith, I've been waiting all day. I got a corker of a
Oh,
question.
we're live.
Awesome. All right.
You know where Corker come from?
No.
People from Ireland, they live in Cork, they're called Corkers.
Yeah.
Is he not ready?
No, he's not ready.
Okay, 'cause it's live. It's almost ready.
Go on live. My relatives and I.
Well, now I've lost my dramatic entrance. I was hoping to leave and then walk back in. You know, this isn't behind the ferns or anything.
Well, you could do, ma'am, question, name and address.
So in case anyone in the audience has not figured this out, this is going to be a pretty informal kind of meeting. My name's Keith Menard, and kind of the way that this started was Hal approached me about putting something together about a week ago and moderating some sort of candidates forum. And it's something that we used to do many years ago. I know when I first started, we had something over at the Jenks store, and there was a very lively debate, and and it was good. And so when Hal approached me about that, I kind of had some flashbacks to that, and I do believe that it is something that's missing in the town, and hopefully going forward, it's something maybe we can get slightly more formalized. I know not a lot of people have wanted to pick up that football, for doing it, and there's been a lot of years where there haven't necessarily been a lot of contested races. This year, there are a lot of contested races. So with that said, as I alluded to, this all came together very last minute, and so there were a lot of candidates who had previous engagements, and they were not available, and that's okay. So kind of one of the ground rules that we're going to have for this is we are not going to talk about other candidates because for good reasons they're not here to respond or kind of give their own 2 cents. So with that, I think we will start off by going around the table, and if each person could introduce themselves as well as what they are running for, and a 5-minute or less why you're running and what you think that you can do for the town. So we'll start to my right with Mr. Preston.
Thank you. I'm Rich Preston. I'm running for a seat on the planning board. Short bio, I've lived in town for 40 years, and I'm recently retired from Belmont Public Schools. Yay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of an adjustment, but that's good. It's all good. So years ago, in a time far away, I was very involved with town government for about 25 years, and then I stepped away, and that included some time on the planning board, and we did some really interesting things there, including developing the first master plan, which we hope to do again. But now that I'm retired, I have more time available, so after a 10-year break, I'm stepping back into the ring. So I'm very interested in serving. I'm currently an associate member of the planning board. The selectmen were good enough to appoint me. It's a limited position. It's technically a non-voting position in that you can participate in the conversation, which I find valuable, but you can only vote if there's someone missing or that you don't have a quorum. So now I'm running for a full elected position.
So, and you're seeing, being here for 40 years.
God, that sounds like a big number.
Doesn't it?
Oh my God, hearing you say it.
You've seen, I feel like, there was incremental changes to the town that I would almost describe as being up against a dam that is set to start releasing water. How do you view the planning board as being able to balance the people who really love the town they moved into 40 years ago and the town that has needed to adapt to be able to keep up with the economic pressures that surround us?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I moved here, we had not quite 5,000 people. Now it's about twice that. I think it's just over 9,000 people. The planning board is a very interesting board in that, until recently, there have been some issues that have come up. The planning board would run below the radar, I would often say. But the planning board is an elected position, and it is probably one of the more influential boards in the town. Some would say even more so than the selectmen in some ways, because there's so many things they do that affect people's life, directly and indirectly. And some of the responsibilities are oversight of residential subdivisions. There are currently 10 subdivisions in town, and growing, of varying states of completion, without getting into it too much. They also do, recently, we do site plan review, which is review and approval of industrial and commercial projects, which is big. And we have a couple of those coming down the pipe. One that was just finished, the Cubes at Gilboa, and we have another one, the Cubes at Pine, that's coming up. The zoning changes, which can directly affect people's lives, how you can use your land. And we also do the master plan. And the master plan is something that the state wants you to do, requires that you do. And you assess the entire town in terms of recreational resources, open space, traffic, land use, roads, bridges, what have you. So you do a full assessment of the town as it is today and document it. And then you project out 20 years from now how you see your town now. So it's a very interesting process because we involve as many people in town as are interested. We have a master plan committee, and then we have at-large people, and then we have programs as we go along. We invite the public to come in and talk about all these programs because our town and our zoning is whatever our town wants it to be. It can be custom fit to how it is we see it and what we want done and how we want to use our land. So the master plan is very important. So we'll be going through that process shortly, and I'm actually looking forward to that because I think that's the most important thing that we do. Circling back, I don't think I answered your question. Towns are dynamic. They're always changing. We're feeling a lot of pressure right now because of, one reason would be the increase in real estate values. I've always thought we were the bargain. We were a great place to live. We were semi-rural. We had resources in town. We're next to two major cities, 20 minutes, 30 minutes from two major cities, right off the highway. So I thought 20 years ago that we were going to be a boom town. Now we're starting to see those pressures because the real estate is so expensive in Metro Boston and other metropolitan areas that we're feeling people are moving out here more and more. So we're starting to see an increase in population. And
in turn, businesses are seeing it as a bargain as well, with being not too far off the pike, right off 146, not too far off 395. So, kind of back to that point of there are business and rural pressures, that kind of go from both ends.
And interesting to note, it was well before the first master plan, 40 years ago. That's why we zoned those areas on those ends of town as commercial industrial. The hope was eventually we would have the infrastructure to support those businesses and that they could site themselves adjacent to those highways. So it's taken a long time, but now we're starting to see things move in that direction, of course. And as far as the other pressures, increased population, it hasn't been as fast as I thought. We're still under 10,000. Interesting enough, I was hoping we'd see someplace where we could buy groceries, a chain, or a drugstore, so we wouldn't have to go out of town.
Yeah.
And I'm told by the Economic Development Commission head, Bob, they want to see that number, 10,000. So come on into town, people. We need those numbers. So.
I would love to take a poll of residents and say, okay, which would you rather have, FiOS or a grocery store?
Yeah, that's going to be a very close race because I think a lot of people haven't been at the senior center and talking to them. You know what I mean? They want a choice with, you know what I mean, between the cable providers and stuff like that. And,
And I won't, that was a,
so.
it was a quip and probably an inappropriate one at that, given who's broadcasting us right now, but.
I think it's demographic. Young people want FiOS.
Yep.
For the game,
Old people
right?
want a grocery.
It's
Yeah.
the rest of us who want someplace to shop.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, personally, I would, I don't need another grocery store. There's plenty around that I can go to. But I would love a shop. You know what I mean? And that's always another interesting one to me is when you put out like, oh, what do you want to see in a business? Like, and people are like, I want to see a McDonald's. I'm like, no, like I want mom and pops, but that's just me. Les.
So I'm Les Stevens, lived in the town for 45 years, graduated here, and went off to.
What are you running for? Because this gets a little
Yep.
convoluted
Yep. So
on the ballot.
I'm running for the one-year seat, for selectmen against with Leo Lyons. So we're challenging for the same seat to actually backfill for Kevin Morris, who's a long-time serving selectman, who's done a wonderful job over the years.
Got drafted by Canada. I understand.
Decided to go to El Canada, but we're losing him, and there's big shoes to be filled there, filling Kevin Morris's seat for that one-year term. So that's the seat I'm running for. But again, been here for 45 years, seen the town go through some really dicey times. Was here when we had Senator Kennedy come out, and come before our town, when we had the challenge of a mega dump being put into Route 16, and the challenges that we had to defend off that, where we didn't want to be another Johnson, Rhode Island. And
You're old enough to remember that?
oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I was in the third row.
I wasn't gonna say it, Rich, because honestly, I was like, wow, that.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
think you were old enough to
Oh, yeah.
remember that, but
Oh yeah,
I,
you remember, you remember those things. So as well as the wind turbines and stuff like that were proposed. Again, so I think it's really important, going forward, the challenges that we have, having that right balance of, what the citizens want and what we want our town to be and look like. Building our infrastructure, repairing our roads. Bringing back some of the things that we lost during COVID, or during pre-COVID as well, such as our parades and doing the things that we've done with our veterans. We haven't looked at finding good partnerships where we could address senior housing, where affordable senior housing can be offered. If you look at the surrounding towns, from Northbridge to Uxbridge to Webster, all of them have some type of senior affordable housing options there, and a housing authority that offers that. So looking for partnerships from there. So there's a number of things to tackle in these next several years, and it becomes a critical decision of which direction do we go in, where do we focus our time, what partnerships we go off and build, and who can build those partnerships. I've got a track record of building partnerships. I've got a track record of being in local government, presenting before several boards, serving on the planning board in Douglas as well as in Webster for 5 years at both, and as well as serving on the Hubbard Regional Hospital. So. That's running for the one-year seat, and look forward to folks coming out and voting on Tuesday.
So what would you say is the role of the Board of Selectmen in town?
It rolls up to being the voice of the taxpayer, getting the feedback from the community, seeing what they need help with, where they need us to go, in what direction. We've got pockets of areas in town that need help regarding their road infrastructure and their drainage and stuff like that. We've got, problems up on North Street with a project that's, half incomplete, that hasn't been really vetted and tested. And there's some concerns there. So the job of the selectmen is really to, get the feedback from the citizens, work with the citizens and pushing back on, if there's an issue wrong, working with the state, and trying to get a better, agreement with the state and more help with funding. Also proposing different things for the state. One of the things is, other surrounding states have carried forward almost a tax break for seniors who are homeowners that live in their homes, that want to stay in their homes. Massachusetts is behind the times on that. Instead, just recently, they put forward a stormwater bylaw, which, other communities such as Millbury, as well as Webster and other communities, some of them have adopted and or fought against them because it becomes almost like a hidden fee or tax on the citizens that are there. So I think the idea is, with selectmen is you've got to really, be an advocate for your tax base, for your taxpayers, and, continue to, ask the state to come in and assist, and fund things and look for different funding avenues. We are, I think Kevin's here will hold me true, what are we getting, 45 cents or so, or $45 on the acre on the state forest or something?
$250,000 a year.
$250,000 a year, on state forest there.
Quarter of the
Yeah, and we've got to be able to go to the state to have some type of more of a reasonable agreement and negotiation with them. And, those are going to have some deep conversations.
Sure, but those conversations have been happening for at least a decade. Like, why, what would you expect to change? Because, I mean, if I'm being honest, I think it's a pipe dream to say that we're going to get any more out of the state.
So-
I think if anything, the state, especially as they're starting to look at their tax coffers, being challenged, with expenditures, everything from the MBTA to, housing, the housing crisis, the migrant, issues. Like, I can't see them saying, you know what we should do
No.
is we should start paying more
Yeah.
for towns that house state forest.
So if you look at what Westboro did with the state, when they took over the old state hospitals and stuff like that, they had a cooperative agreement, and so they turned around and worked in the balance there where they wanted to redevelop the land and put in maybe, shopping plaza up on Route 16 West. And we can, work with the state to say, hey, we need this would be beneficial to the community, and trying to do like land swaps with the state. So these are the things that we haven't pushed forward enough and consistently year after year to work with that. We pick it up every so often and then put it down, and we pick it up every so often, but you have to be consistent and consistently, pushing that effort. And Westboro was successful to be able to say, hey, if we're going to redevelop this land, what's the co-op agreement that we have put in place, and having those agreements. I think there's a lot of benefit that, we live in Douglas, and most of us are concerned with going to Wallam Lake and utilizing that, resource and stuff like that. But it's a shame because, again, having lived here with, Richard's been here for 40 years, he knows as well, it used to be a great place to go and take your kids and go down there and go down the lake. It's a little concerning that, we live in a town and we're kind of like, we don't really want to go there during the summer, and that's really a shame. So I think you got to continue to fight that battle as well to see where there's some benefits, or maybe it's limited. So, it's kind of Massachusetts residents or the town's days and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of things we can do for our seniors that live in town, the ones that are homeowners, the ones that are, that need additional services. We haven't, tried to do partnerships with, UMass and try to, build more of a relationship with some of the community hospitals and community areas.
So that's, we'll move on to you, Hal, right after this, but it's something that struck me as I've been here longer, and it's something that hopefully each one of you can kind of touch on as it pertains to the role that you're running on, or running for, I should say. And that is, what do we do for our residents to make them want to stay? It was something that really struck me during the Proposition 2.5 override discussion that we had many years ago, and that was, there was very much a sentiment of, look, I'm here for the schools, invest in the schools so that my house will be worth more when my kids are grown and I can leave. So is there an impetus on the town to invest in more than just providing good schools? Or, is that really kind of our role? And we're trying to maximize value for the shareholders of the town so that they can then sell their asset, move.
Well, I think you have to continue to offer services that align with other communities and towns. You know what I mean? One of the things was, the elderly bus, being able to, put that out there and put that online, the wonderful work that they've done with the senior center, you know what I mean? Starting from really scratch and building that to what it is today, and continuing to build that upon. You have to be able to kind of offer services, and address those needs of your community base. And those are your taxpayers that, aren't using your school, but need someplace to go and have a social area, and provide that. We used to have a, VFW hall that was active, and a lot of veterans, place for veterans to go. And, over time, we've kind of have a standard place for our veterans to have meetings and go. It's, our veteran agent, I believe at one time is now over in Webster or shared with Oxbridge and stuff like that. So I think we just continue to evolve and offer services and partnerships with towns. If the service can't be, added, or, we look at cooperative agreements with other communities and try to continue to offer services for the folks in our community, so we can offer those. And the property values, is all determined based upon what your community offers and what services are available. If you're close to the commuter rail, that's a benefit. That's another checkbox that we won't have because, we don't have the commuter rail.
For better or for worse right now.
Correct. Going through our town and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And some of those towns, I think, will be dealing with the impact of having the commuter rail with what they're doing with the 40B housing, and tying in those to the commuter rails where you're having 4 to 5 story, condo complexes being added in with local communities being against them in some areas and dealing with the fact that they're going to put up these, mega housing buildings and condo complexes. So I'll let Hal weigh in on some things.
Hal?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Harold Davis. I'm one of 3 folks running for the Board of Selectmen for a 3-year term. I'm not new to town service. I served 12 years on the Board of Selectmen previously. I've been on the ZBA, and I've been for a number of years, I had been chairman of the Economic Development Commission. Personally, I'm an attorney, and while Shakespeare said, let's hang all the lawyers, maybe Douglas could benefit by having one lawyer on the Board of Selectmen. My specialty is municipal law and economic development. I'm of counsel with the Boston law firm Davis, Mom, and DeAugustine. My primary motive for getting involved in town government was to broaden the town's tax base. Up until recently, only 6% of our tax revenue came from business, and that was crushing the homeowner. This came to a head when we barely passed a 2.5 override to keep the schools going and provide other services at the time. We were in danger at one point of closing our town library because there weren't enough funding for that. That has turned around, and I attribute that to 2 things. One, the market for land in this area accelerated, and secondly, we had the good fortune of hiring our economic development director, Bob Manarick. Bob was a former pilot, and I attribute his acumen in helping the town with the checklist that a pilot has to go through before he takes off. And Bob was constantly battling between developers and investors and the state, managed to get us approximately $10 million to cover the infrastructure that was necessary to attract new business into the town. Most towns use their own funds to put in the infrastructure in an industrial park, and then you attract business. So we had the good fortune. And maybe we talked about the state forest. It takes up 25% of the town. I think because some people in the state realized that so much of our tax base was tied up at only getting $250,000 a year in the state forest, that they were much more receptive to the grants that we looked for to put in the roads, the water, and the sewer. I think somebody asked about, the value of the state forest, and I think, Keith, you asked, what can we do to make Douglas a more exciting place besides having good schools? I think we could use the state forest to run some recreational and educational programs. We have this resource that's there. My wife and I, quite frankly, didn't take much advantage of it until COVID hit, and then we started to use it much more often and appreciated the beauty and the potential that's there. So I hope that can happen. So the reason why I want to get involved again is protect the homeowner, keep our taxes stable, trying to avoid any tax increases, and attract business. Now, this comes to pluses and minuses with attract, there's increased traffic and trucking that we're worried about. We've taken some precautions on that, but
Can you expand on that? Like what, because I'm almost waiting for, I go on Facebook once in a
Yeah.
while, and I'm just kind of like waiting for the, once everything starts to open,
Yeah.
when it's.
we don't have it. there's
I
not a
can't get
tenant.
through town
there's
and,
not a-
you
not
know.
a tenant. By the way, that project is contributing $1.2 million a year, and we have the highest free cash balance, several million dollars on hand because of that.
And look, I think it is human nature to want it both ways.
Sure.
Right? It's, we want
Yeah.
the infrastructure, we don't want our taxes to continue to go crazy, but why am I stuck in
Okay.
traffic behind 16 Amazon trucks? And
Well-
why are they zipping through my
A
neighborhood?
couple of things with precautions that were taken is that the traffic exiting is designed to force everybody to the right to get onto 146. And there's also signage saying, do not take the left turn. And we've been told that Public Works and the police will enforce that. So if we find tractor trailers trying to exit to the left, I hope and I think that the rules of the road will be vigorously managed. There was the other project over in Northbridge with the three towns.
Tri-Town.
Tri-Town. They recently did a traffic study that showed maybe that the impact was not as significant. We don't know. Obviously, it's the problem that we're in, and most communities are in, you have to make tough choices. We were ready to close the town down when the 2.5 came around, and I think, Kevin was on the board and I was on the board, and we made a solemn pledge to the town that we were going to do something about tax revenue. Unfortunately, we're not attractive to have Microsoft make a major headquarters here. So we had to deal with what we had. We had land and we have good location. Now I think we can be more sophisticated in who we attract to town. You mentioned another thing about making the town interesting. We should do something about our downtown to revitalize that. If you've been to Putnam, Connecticut, that's a great place that I like to go to. Couldn't we be a minimum, a minor Putnam, have antique stores and more cafes and things? So
what do you think, because I agree, I don't know if everyone's been to Putnam. It's
the happening
it's-
place.
Yeah, it's a fun town.
Yeah.
They figured out how to use their resources well.
If I could, 20 years ago, it wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was a cafe that went in,
Yeah.
Victoria Station, and it just built on itself.
Yeah.
Now they have how many restaurants? Antique stores?
And they have a theater. Yeah.
So
they-
what do you
they made it a
think?
destination.
Yeah.
What do you think is that tipping point? Like what is the, what do you think makes a town go from needing revitalization in their downtown to,
The right people and mobilizing the business community. There is a program the state has, it's called a Business Improvement District, where the local merchants can get together and try to come up with common signage, maybe programs to attract people to the downtown. So this is not unique to Douglas. This is true with a lot of smaller towns trying to make their downtowns more interesting. But there are some tools available for state, but you need the merchants, the property owners to get behind it, realizing that they will benefit financially if the area is more vibrant.
And just to add there, I mean, it also, should involve mixed-use zoning, where you have, commercial, storefront, and then above there, can have apartments, on the second and third floor, because then you've got residents there that come and use the shops. it opens it up, and it really becomes where the person who wants to come down and go, grab dinner or grab lunch if they're working from home and stuff like that. Communities are starting to get back like that, where they're building those in. If you go to Westboro, they've gone through where the old train station was, and they put in, a Ted's in there, and they've done a mixed use of their commercial and residential storefronts, and it creates an opportunity there. And I think that helps kind of expand it and creates a little more lively downtown involvement, which helps drive more business, because if you've got people there.
So if you look at, we'll even take downtown Northbridge, and the travesty that is their roadscape. To me, that is kind of one of the major obstacles holding back downtown is the lack of parking. Like, how do you fix that?
If I could,
Please.
it is 25%.
You're in the,
by way.
you're in the
But-
plan, you're in the
of course, I
planning
got
board,
that.
so you
We'll
should have the
numbers
answers to
due.
that.
We'll measure
right, sure.
later.
The question is, first of all, you asked the original question, how do you make a community a viable community that people are attracted to? So you need to take a look at that. But
In that in-between, right? Because, you have your people who have school-age children, and then you have your Gen X of people, and I use that as a general term of like, they're just kind of fit in, they're not seniors yet, and they're not, or adults, and they're not still of, having, kids in the school system, so they just kind of are in that in-between. Like, how do you make Douglas an attractive place to stay?
Good question, big question. So we talked about downtown, and we've been talking about this at Master Plan, we just started that up again, and I said, let's talk about the downtown community, and what do you need to do to create a downtown that is a destination, and that it's a place you want to go to because you want to go there, and not because you have to go there. It's not just some place you have to go pick up something or get a pizza. You want to go there, and whether it's certain types of businesses, taverns, what have you, sidewalk dining. And also, we had talked about recreational entities. People like to be able to go and ride their bikes and walk and do what have you. And we have an opportunity here. We have a river that runs downtown, the Mumford River, and people don't even see it, barely. You don't even think about it. So there was talk about what would it take to develop a river walk that people could both ride their bikes and walk. And that would help make it a destination. Go to the river walk, go have something to eat. You got to sort of build it in bits and pieces. And at our meeting yesterday, people were just like, it's too expensive, we can't do it. You can do anything you want to do, as long as it's time and energy and effort and ingenuity. You can get financial resources if you want to do that. You can buy the property if you want to. They're saying one person owns it and it's this and that. They're not doing anything with it. I think that's a resource you can do. The other thing is I went to Concord, downtown Concord, Massachusetts. That is probably the quintessential vibrant downtown area. Now, they have the advantage of all their history there. That brings people in. But they have this amazingly vibrant downtown. And one thing they have is off-street parking. So you don't want parking on the street because that's a problem. What you want is parking like a block in.
Particularly with the traffic
Just-
going by anyway, so.
So what they did is they purchased property, and they have this wonderfully convenient parking area, and, a center to give people information on Concord right there. It was the most amazingly welcoming setup I've ever seen. And we have that now. And that's why yesterday I asked, do we still own that elementary school? Because we already own that property, and that's just a block behind some of those buildings. That's what you want, is convenient, close, inexpensive parking, so that people will come, and they're not thinking about, I don't want to park in the street, and I don't want to walk far away. It's something we can do. You almost need like a downtown master plan to lay it out, to make it attractive.
Involving the
make it
property
attractive.
owners and the merchants.
That's
and-
right, make it attractive for them, because it builds on itself, like Putnam. You start to see them adding businesses.
Yeah, like I said, I believe that there's a tipping point for every town, and you either wind up on, the C end of the seesaw or the saw end of the seesaw, and it depends on where
You're
where
right.
that winds up.
So Northbridge, when Northbridge was revitalizing their downtown Church Street area. They actually purchased behind the lots and created the behind the storefront parking. So in rear parking along those, the dentist office, the law office, and stuff like that, and got
They
that to
still managed to make those awful bump outs,
Yeah.
that was their
bins or whatever.
yeah, and again, that was their view on how they wanted to kind of bring that, Church Street a little more closer. You know what I mean? Whether it was the best design or not, you know what I mean? It was their proposal, their design.
It looks attractive,
But
but
I
it's not
think,
practical.
Right.
correct. But I
what they're
think
trying to do is slow traffic, too.
as well, yeah. But I think they also did one thing was added additional parking there behind, those businesses and opening up that. So it made it convenient. And if you go down there for, during the lunch hour or in the morning hours and stuff like that, those parking lots are full, behind the businesses and stuff like that. And because those storefronts are there. Nighttime, it's not, it's not there because they only have a few restaurants that are open in Northbridge.
And I believe Unibank actually converted the lot next to them into
Correct.
free public parking.
Correct.
I don't know if Unibank has a similar kind of empty lot that's next to them here that they could do something like that with, but,
The other thing is signage. and
Possibly.
The signage and the wires for the utilities. We've got a crazy mismatch of signage. If we could get the merchants to agree and come up with some standard size signs, and I think also if we could bury the utilities.
Yep.
I'm not sure of the cost of that, but it's worth looking at to make it more attractive and appealing, and the parking.
Congrats. Yep.
Those
and
comments.
I'm still waiting for someone to say that you need to have appropriate street lighting at every single crosswalk.
Yeah.
That's my own little pet peeve.
Yeah.
Every time I almost.
It's not where we
hit.
should be putting our resources.
Yeah.
Well, when you have a crosswalk, there should be appropriate lighting. Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to cross in the evening, you're a sitting duck. But that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
Just like I would prefer
Yeah.
we not talk about the state forest because I don't want to attract more people out there when I'm
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to go back around the horn real quick, and then we'll open it up for a question and answer with about 15 minutes to go. Hal, you mentioned the fact that we actually have money in free cash. And I feel like money in free cash usually manages to find, it's like when my wife says, "Oh, I actually have free time." And I was like, "Yeah, for about 5 minutes,"
Yeah.
because it's like a black hole. As soon as you
Yeah.
say you have free
Yeah.
time, something's going to come in and suck up that free
Yeah.
time. And there are communities that surround us who for decades have had infinitely more money, right? Like, they've already had the distribution centers, they've had the shopping plazas, they've had money to work with, but still seem to find themselves in financial straits. Now, I won't call them dire straits, but in some instances, they have been. How do you prevent that from happening?
I'd like to think of the free cash as like seed corn that could be invested to produce more revenues for the town and making those improvements that would generate income back again, and attract the business, for example, to the downtown area. And if they're successful, that's going to generate more taxes. I think you're 100% correct. The typical situation with free cash, we'll be a little more generous with the teachers, or we'll do this, and we'll cover that from free cash. So your warning is 100% accepted, but I think if we're conscious about saying this is a special opportunity, don't keep it segregated for something that will earn more for the town. Seed corn, I would say.
Les?
Just to add on that, I think, there's been some restraint from the selectmen very smartly. If you look at the opera money where, such as Dudley, went off and said, "Oh my God, look at all this free money we got, let's go, spend," and then turn around and have some tough decisions and tough votes and dealing with tough decisions going forward. Dudley's a community that's struggling with, because, they kind of went through money that they shouldn't, so instead of pumping the brakes. So we've got some good financial people that are in this town hall, some good decisions, and I think it's just the right approach of, what do we have to spend? What do we have to do invest to get a return? Where do we have to help the residents? Where do we have to help some business, the right businesses to come in here? That, where we're looking at more of a, smaller commercial businesses that can come in, not industrial, and we don't always need a big warehouse. We need some, other alternative facilities that maybe are working and manufacturing like a light commercial area, and those things there. So I think those investments that return more tax dollars, and then you continue to let it grow. But, the town's done a great job managing the funds and financially, but again, if you have to continue that along the way, sometimes it's a challenge. Everybody has their hands up and stuff like that because it's free cash and they think, oh, let's go. But you have to be smart about how do we invest so we can continue to grow and have our town move in the right direction. And, where there's more growth and opportunity and a little bit of a relief on the taxpayers, where you're seeing that, commercial and industrial growth there and having that balance there.
I think the single homeowners want to see that their taxes are kept low or frozen as much as possible. That's what we sold economic development on, that would relieve the burden on that. Unfortunately, I think Worcester is one of the highest increased in rental fees of any place in the United States, even more than Greater Boston. I
Yeah.
saw that, was that in the Globe recently?
It was in one of the
Story about that?
papers, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're battling a lot of different
It
forces
was like
on
number
this,
one or
but-
number two.
Yeah,
It was really
but I
high
think
up
to
there.
keep the public engaged, we've got to do something to show them that all of our efforts are geared towards stabilizing their taxes as much as possible.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, you obviously, in planning board, don't necessarily pull the purse strings,
Thankfully.
but
I have a quick answer for you, if I could.
Please.
It's 2.5. It's 2.5. No one wants to increase taxes, but 2.5% does not keep up with inflation. It doesn't keep up with contractual obligations. It doesn't keep up with insurance rates going up at 5 and 10% a year. You see this every year. When I was on the board, we were dealing with that all the time. And then
Yep.
the poor child was capital expense. Nothing was happening on that, and we weren't making any improvements because all the money was spent. 2.5% is not enough to maintain a town. And all the towns in the community, 351 cities and towns go through this. I worked for a wealthy community, Belmont. They had to do a $10 million override. Well, they were going to lay a bunch of people.
And that is going, there are a lot of traditionally affluent communities that are struggling with that right now, where
really
the
universal.
bills have come due.
Yeah.
We're not unique.
So you also have to remember, when the 2.5 override passed, it was a double whammy, because also the evaluations, the reevals came out as well. So you got hit twice. You got the 2.5 override, and then you got the reevaluations. What people haven't seen yet, and it's on the horizon, is now the reevaluations of where values are today, where they were 3 years ago. Okay? So that's going to come out. And again, to your point, where taxes are, I think it has to be the balance where you're making smart investments going forward, so you're still generating to kind of offset, going to say, okay, we've got to look at a 2.5. I think, those are the things that you want to do everything that you can prevent, and put out there to manage your business and your books the best way possible, and looking at all options and making those smart investments going forward.
At the same time, we have pressures like our road system is just abominable, potholes, et cetera. And we're doing it piecemeal, $360,000 a year plus the Chapter 90 money from the state. Maybe we've got to bite the bullet, and if you're doing it in increments, it's going to be much more expensive than if you did an extensive road
The
restriction.
cost per mile of roads is not going down.
Yeah,
No.
but it might be cheaper if you were doing a bigger project than a
Yeah.
bunch of little ones, too.
I do always wonder about the, because we had the state come through and pave quite a bit, and it was funny because I saw a void in the brand-new tar that they had just put down. It's like, does anyone come through and say, is this good? Like, you know, it's like what happened? You know, there's a void there. How do we? Like, that's where this road's going to fail. But I am under a very, very hard deadline, so I do want to open it up to the audience. So if either of you have any questions, I'll invite you to come up and grab one of the mics. Mr. Morse?
I promised I wasn't going to sit at this table.
Oh, was
You're
that
on,
end?
you're on that.
Stay over here,
Yeah.
where it's a little safer. So I want to first start, echo what I said at the senior center. I'm so happy to see people volunteering and willing to give up their time to better serve our community. So I have a question. It's a poignant one, and I was actually, there was a former selectman that was in my head that kind of forced me to come up with it. Is at some point in time when you're sitting on the board, so to kind of help the question that Keith asked, primary function of the Board of Selectmen is it's the policy-making board for the town. That's where a lot of the power comes from, or at least helping steer the direction of where we go. But being that, you're going to have things that come into the community that financially, economically, look really good for the town, but they go against your personal core values. When a situation like that comes in front of you, how do you handle it?
You know, so having sat in the planning board, you know, and have applicants coming before us as well as when they're the property owners and they're coming before, you know, you may personally disagree with the applicant, their business, their models, what they're proposing and stuff like that. But it's a challenge to you know, look and weigh in the decisions of how do you best, you know, serve your community with what they're proposing. You know, you may personally not even like the applicant coming before your board for any particular reasons and stuff like that, or what they're doing. So, but you have to be neutral. You have to look at what's in the best interest of your community and put your, you know, any bias aside and go forward from there. You know what I mean? And policies as well. You know what I mean? You know, there's policies that, you know, might have to be adopted that personally, you know, someone may disagree with personally, but again, what's in the best interest of the town? And you have to put those aside. You know what I mean? And that's what people sometimes forget, to make that disconnection where they've got to look at that.
Hal?
Well, I think first of all, the rule of law is paramount, you know, not just being a lawyer, but we take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth and also follow all the rules and regulations to our best ability in the town. So that's sort of the starting point. I think we all have some goals that we want, in which I think that's very consistent with that, as long as we're not overstepping what the rules of the road are. But we are, as you said, we are a Board of Selectmen is a board of directors for the town. We don't micromanage departments. That's up to our town administrator. We work with him. We have questions.
And he micromanages them?
He can micromanage, but we should be the big picture.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing, just to add on what Al was saying, is, you know, it's important for the Board of Selectmen to work with the other boards to share, like, hey, here's the vision, or here's what we want to accomplish, and share that and work with the boards. And sometimes there's a disconnect, you know what I mean, along the way, or you know, it's not, you know, flowing through. And you know, because sometimes we have to evolve. We have to continue to evolve and move with the times of, you know, where things, you know, we're dealing with right now with the energy code, and we're dealing with a lot of other things to stretch communities. We're dealing with, you know, pressures from 40Bs and stuff like that. So it's having those discussions, solar farms coming in, and, you know, you can't deny those applications and stuff like that, but you've got to work with your other boards to say, is there something, and have that communication channel through, so there's no board or no
I think
members.
particularly the selectmen and the planning board, as Richard pointed out, there are a lot of issues that you're pretty decisive on what you do, new projects, et cetera, so it would be good to have maybe a joint meeting or two to discuss what's going on in the town.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so, and I think that question also is completely appropriate for the planning board of, when you have projects coming before you and,
So personal beliefs versus,
Versus greater good for the town.
yeah. Well, I'm a stunningly unselfish person, so I'm good. Stunningly, I'm good.
Uniquely.
It's so easy when you're sitting on these boards, sometimes you don't want to admit it, but you have people coming before you, we have business people, we have excavators, we have developers, and you get to know these people too. And it's so easy on occasion to go along to get along, but I'm not that person, and I never was. I'm not a go along to get along guy. I don't mind being the odd man out, and I never forget. It sounds like grandstanding, but I never forget why I'm there, especially on planning board. I'm not there for the developer. I'm not there for the excavator. I'm not there for the business person. They can do what they can do within the law. I'm there for the people who live around that development or live around that earth removal project or live in the greater town. That's who I'm thinking about. The people who come in and they're really upset because their house is shaking because it's blasting. Or they have dust, it's like Oklahoma, like last summer. Like Oklahoma here in town. And when I went and looked why, it's because too many waivers were given for earth removal projects. You're only supposed to have up 2 and 3 acres open. People have 10, 15, 20 acres. They're not doing reclamation. It's like a dust storm. And people people who live around that don't deserve that, and you've let them down when that happens. So that's how I feel about it. I'm there for them. And recently, quite often, I'm the only one voting against these things. But I don't mind, I'm very comfortable doing that. I'm old and cranky, and I'll do it. I know.
Every town needs a couple of cranks.
Ask one follow-up question for him.
absolutely.
When it comes to planning. You were part of the planning board, part of the original master plan committee.
Yes.
From then to now, how did that master plan work out, and what would you look at differently?
Well, I think we did a swell job. But, you mean in terms of how the community looks, or how we use the master plan? Because that's a good question, because a lot of master plans, when they do it, it's like this. They put it on a shelf and it collects dust, but we didn't do that. We had a master plan implementation committee, and I started on that, and it was finished, to his credit, by Paul Peterson. Gentleman still lives in town, he's a wonderful person. They went through every recommendation. There might have been 80, 90 recommendations. They went through every recommendation and did what they could. They did it, they didn't do it, they went round and round to the different boards, committees, commissions, or they decided it was, they didn't have to follow through with those. And I'll tell you something, we recently applied for funding from CMRPC. We're looking for a grant. The town just passed $30,000. And so we're going to be using that to hire professionals and planners to help us get through this process. But when we applied for the $100,000 grant, they said, well, did you do anything? Have you done anything with the last master plan? And we had a book about half as thick as the master plan, and it was all the details about everything we did and everything we followed through with on that master plan. We did it. He says a lot of people don't do anything, so we handed him that book, and that's why we got $100,000. So if that answers your question, it was a wonderful tool, and we've used it. And even Bob, who's on the Economic Development Commission, he told me at a meeting just a couple of weeks ago that he used our master plan in terms of planning,
Grant
what he was doing with
application.
commercial industrial sites. It's 25 years old, but it was still relevant and helpful.
And I would actually say that, just real quickly, I would say that, Bob is probably our Dante Schenectady.
Yeah.
Schenectady, yeah, right. Scarnecchia, there we go.
Sounds good. I don't know what that is, but it sounds great.
He was instrumental in the Patriots' success, but a lot of people, like, unless you kind of get into the weeds, like, you never heard of him. He was just in another room, just total unsung hero, but was working behind the scenes to get a lot done. And I feel like that is kind of Bob in a
I think
nutshell.
that was what the selectmen were running interference often for Bob to help the town out.
Yeah, you guys can get the eggs thrown at you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Good luck in.
Never say the last.
Yep.
Let me ask you a question.
Perfect.
Oh, you all good questions. Yeah.
Other questions? All right. then,
Thank you. I think
Yeah.
we're glad that we elected you as moderator. You've proven again that you deserve reelection next time, but
it's easier when you're unopposed than
Yeah.
when you have an extremely extremely gifted candidate running against you. So, I appreciate it, and
Thank you.
like I said, I hope that that we can do this
Yeah.
again.
No, this is
Going forward.
Yep.
I am happy to run it. I know it's always one of the unique things in our town that people may or may not know is that we do have sides. We have a Republican side, a Republican committee, we have a Democrat committee, and so it was always kind of tough for me to be like, hey, I'd do that, I'd moderate that debate because I am on one side. I hope that I've always managed to stay in a very central, independent-minded way in how I've been moderator, because I believe that is part of that particular position is to
You've
be
done the job
straight
well.
down. So,
I agree.
Yeah.
Good job.
thank you.
Yep.
So, in that, I am, as long as I am not running against anyone in the future, for the next 2 years, I'm happy to do something like this. That said, it is something that should probably be brought up to the Board of Selectmen at some point, and this probably isn't the right forum for it, but the town clerk and the town moderator are on the same 3-year cycle. And were something to ever happen, and you always try to anticipate the unanticipated. And the two people in those positions were both new. That would be a very challenging, time for that.
Town meeting crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
have
and
to keep you and Chris very happy then.
Well,
Healthy.
I always say if you manage to people, you will eventually find yourself in trouble. If you manage to positions, you are more likely to set yourself up for success. And so with that, again, this isn't necessarily the right forum, but that's never stopped me in the past. I would be willing to, and I don't know how legally it's possible, I am absolutely willing to give up a year of my term, rerun in 2 years, to offset,
Offset the cycle.
the cycle.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
if that ever comes up,
Yeah, Might be a legislative act required to do that, special legislation potentially.
I have no idea. Like I said, I remember there was
Yeah.
something when I was on the government study committee about when we were moving things from elected positions to to hiring, that there was some things that had to be done if somebody was currently in a position. So anyway, great.
I hate to, I just have one business
Please.
thing. I know you want to go, and we have a time thing here, but at the program yesterday, I'm talking about individuals or personalities, but there was a piece of information that went out that needs to be corrected because people are going to be ill-informed. It's just about the project coming up. So we have the cubes at Gilboa, and that project has been completed. That's the big warehouse? And that's almost completed and done. But there's one across the street at CRG Cubes at Pine. Okay, that's proposed, and that's almost, they're proposing 3 million square feet of warehouse space. The state has gone through that, so it's in the nascent stage, it's very new. But they have not applied to the town. They have not come before planning board, the site plan review, nor have they gone to the Conservation Commission. And yesterday, it was said that it was done, and it had gone through that process. And I just don't want people at home to know that they've missed something, because we're going to hold public hearings when we do those, so that it is not a done deal. It's,
They just did the
stay
state
tuned.
environmental, that's all that was
Yeah.
completed.
That's right. Yeah, it hasn't gone through the town yet. There are no town approvals. But, so,
Okay. And if one of you could just give a quick plug for when the election is.
May 14th,
May
next,
14th.
this coming Tuesday.
Excellent. So Super
Unless there's an
Tuesday.
act of God interfering with
And I will say,
it.
and this is where I will absolutely get on my high horse. I shouldn't, because I really need to go, but There is no election where a person's vote matters more than in your local election.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, I don't vote until I vote for president.
Yeah.
And the president, as far as your day-to-day life, does not have nearly the impact that the people on the ballot on your
Planning
local.
Board of Selectmen.
Right, like, when you think about, somebody blasting down the street, or what, the town you live in is going to look like in 5 years, you are much, much more impacted by these local ballots than you are by a presidential election.
By
So,
state or federal together.
Agree. Yeah.
It really is about local.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep,
Starts at local
absolutely,
Particularly where we're not in a swing state anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
right.
All right.
There's that too, so,
Yeah.
thank you all very much for attending. Again,
Thank you again.
So for the people that were not able to make it because of scheduling conflicts, it is completely understandable, in the short timeline that we
Yeah.
put this together.
Yep.
And hopefully, like I said, we will start something anew. So thank you all.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.